I'm your host, J. Drew Silvers, and this is the Where We End Up podcast. And the guest that we have today is someone that I'm super excited to talk about. It's Bakara Wintner. She's the head witch in charge of Everyday Magic. She's an author. She's a co-creator of tarot decks, and God knows what. Did I miss something?
You just started. Keep going.
That's a pretty good intro to the personality right there. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you. But so we have an interesting, well, I would say kind of interesting origin story in a way. You contacted me. I had no idea who you were. It was either
Been
like,
a long time fangirl, long
oh,
time follower.
wow.
I was saying to you, I remember still looking at your Instagram while I was at the dog park, like right after I got in Zadie, which was a year and a half before I opened EM. So a year and a half
Mm.
before I contacted you, I was around.
You were a presence that I didn't yet know.
I was a friendly ghost.
Okay, I'll take that. That's fair. And then when you were looking for like your thing is you like to curate things that speak to you. You like to bring things in, and that was kind of the beginning stages of Everyday Magic. Was you trying to find that like vibe and what you wanted your store to feel like?
Yes.
Your in-person presence, your online presence, that had to kind of match and look like you wanted it to, and feel the way that you wanted it to. Whether you were looking at it on a screen or walking through a door, like that was kind of the point, right?
Yes.
So you sought that out. For some reason, you hit me up about it. And I just remember you wrote me a DM and you asked if I would sell some of my products in your store to your store. And I first said no.
Fair.
It was
We
kind
had zero followers and we're 0 days old. We didn't exist, and you
didn't
didn't know who I was.
I had no idea what was going on with you. So, and I get those sometimes, and most of the time, I do kind of push them off, just because I don't know, and I like to. It's kind of the same thing as you. You want things to feel a certain way. If you don't know somebody, then you don't know somebody. You don't know their vibe, whatever. So, it wasn't any personal attack on you, obviously, but
No, what's funny is I wasn't surprised by you shooting me down. It was like a sea of people who were like, you don't
oh,
exist and we're not going to give you anything. What did surprise me was the message from you a couple months later being like, hey, I've decided that I'm going to wholesale to you. And I remember being at my register being like, like running to the back to tell my friend.
oh, that's
So thank you for changing your mind.
yeah. I mean, I don't even know where that came from, honestly. Like I just for
It's not
some
like I
reason,
cast spells or anything, or like had
right.
anything like going on in my back room.
No, no, no. I don't even know what it was. Like I just turned around because I told everybody no, and I'm like for some reason I just turned around. I was like, okay, let's see what she has to say. Like let's throw this out there, and then we did it. We worked together on that for quite a while. It was a few years. Um, and then things change and whatever, and we're still friends. My stuff is not currently in there, but we're working on something soon, hopefully.
I have so many ideas, by the
Okay.
way.
So yeah, that would be the exclusive as of this moment anyway. But past that, there's so much you're just you have like a life experience and everything, and you put that into your writing and everything, and you try to relate everything back to maybe not yourself but life experience in general. So just give me a very quick, just because people see the cover of your book WTF is Tarot, and they may think that it's just like straight up instructional guide, but it's more than that.
Yes.
So if just give me like the Reader's Digest basic, like what can you jump in here and tell me about it that's people that might draw people in to think like beyond it just being an instructional book, because it's not.
Yes. So I feel like the first thing that I want to say about what the fuck is tarot is that I wrote it in 2016 and the year is 2023 and
Yes.
I'm not able to make any edits to it. So it is what it is when 26-year-old Bakara wrote it. But there's still a lot that I stand by. I had a lot of creative freedom writing that book. The publishers that approached me didn't really know anything about tarot, so they weren't able to edit me from a informational, like what it actually means. They were able to like grammatically edit me and stuff.
Mhm.
So I had a lot of tarot readers read it afterwards to make sure. But one of the things that was really important to me and that became fairly obvious while I was writing it was that I needed to connect personal experiences to at least the major arcana,
Okay.
because that's how I learned tarot. I was taught in this group in Brooklyn that is not currently active, but it was like a 6 month tarot intensive where every week we would meet somewhere and like discuss one major arcana.
Mhm.
And it became like because I had such an intense connection to it that week, I created personal experiences in the energy of the card like that week. And I feel like that's what really helped shift my understanding of tarot of like I'm memorizing something I'm studying for a test versus like I have a deep ingrained personal understanding with these archetypes and they feel like extensions of my hand. So even if I'm so well what the fuck has these like write-ups of like here's what this card means, I feel like if people aren't able to remember any of that, then they can still read the anecdote afterwards and see what type of experience I'm connecting that to, and they can pull from their own compendium of like what similar experience that evokes for them.
Ah, okay. Awesome. So that's what's so great about it is there's more than enough books that just tell you the literal meaning of whatever this person interpreted that to be, and this is how you do it, and just lay it all out like that. There's enough of those people, right? But there's enough of those books. But that's not that wasn't the direction that you took. You wanted to be relational. It's like exactly what you did in your business as far as retail stuff goes. It's the same concept, but it's rolled into a book. And you said that was a short time frame that you built that into the book, right? That was what did it happen quick, right?
Well, the publisher approached me to write the book and gave me 6 months to do it. So there was only
And how many pages is it?
I think it's like just under 200. Honestly, I really blacked out. Like, I can't believe I wrote it. And I went to school for writing literature and publishing. So writing a book was my dream. And then I got my tarot deck and I was in the final stages of finishing a book.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely put it down and haven't touched it since. Like my life completely changed.
Wow.
So I have this like mostly memoir draft that I spent all of college writing that I then put down to read tarot, which was fine. Like, and it was for the best, and I trust the timing. But then to have it come back full circle, to have someone that I went to college with who now works at this publisher approach me to write the book, to have the literary agency I left to go read tarot full time represent me, and then to publish a book about tarot was like kind of this like cosmic joke in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, but at the same time, and tell me how you feel about this, and hopefully this isn't going a little bit too deep. But your mother was a well-established writer and journalist.
Yes.
Is that a part? That's obviously a part of you. Like that exists in you. But is that like something that guides you with all of that? You think that?
Oh yeah. My dead mom is like a huge part of my personality, and I feel like people with dead moms will like understand this. Like it's a wound that never ever heals, and I like keep getting like as time keeps passing, I keep being shocked at like how long it's been. Like it's like my mother hasn't been on this earth in like 26 years, but it doesn't feel any less relevant or like any less of an absence. So she's become this like source of like mystery and lore in my life. Like I have her trunk in my bedroom that's like full of her like writing, her personal effects, but like it's like covered in like lava lamps. I use it as like a table. I'm like, I'm not opening this, but it's like here.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like in the room.
Yeah.
So something that I realized when I was going through all that stuff is that when she passed away, I was really young, but like not too young to be standardized testing because y'all know how that goes, like first grade.
Of course, of course.
And something that I saw was that my standardized testing before she passed away, I was scoring in the top percentiles of math and science. And then after she passed away, my test scores completely switched, and I was scoring in the top percentiles of like reading comprehension and writing.
Oh, no way.
So I do feel in a lot of ways like my relationship to writing and like reading her writing now and hearing how she talks about writing, like I feel like I became like a Horcrux of her when she passed away. Like I feel like I would have lived a totally different life if she was still here. Like maybe I would be really good at math.
Yeah.
You know.
You never know. Yeah. Yeah. Because that side, it might not be as prevalent because she's still experiencing all of that, and you're more entrenched in it because, like, who knows?
Totally. And I feel her when I'm writing. Like I feel her presence, and I feel the imperative to like finish telling whatever story she died not getting to like tell.
Yeah.
So I do feel like once that's told, and that's like this book that I've like spent forever trying to write, like I absolutely must write it. I must write it before I die, or I'm gonna have to come back.
Oh, that's
to this planet.
there's something so nice about that though. Like, obviously it's tragic, but there's something like, again, like think about where you would be as a person otherwise.
I know. I mean, my brother texts me these hypotheticals. He was really young when our mom passed. I mean, I was 6, but he was 4. So he's like,
Oh,
baby,
yeah.
baby. And he'll text me these questions like 26 years later, being like, if she was alive, do you think we would talk to her every day?
Oh.
And then my dad's still really like angry at her, so I hear about her in the negative through him of
Mhm.
like, like you would have hated her, like y'all would have fought and like competed and like fought about like the writing, and she would have been all
Oh.
over you. And like the truth is like she was an addict, so if she hadn't like beat her addiction, like I would have grown up with like a mother in active addiction. So there's all of these
Oh.
like what ifs that I held so close for so long, and it wasn't until a 12-step program where it was like just repeatedly made clear to me that like these questions about life and death are above your pay grade and honestly none of your business, and like the only reason that like you're not dead and some people are is like seconds and inches, and
Yeah.
like that's really like all you get to know about it. So that's like where like you may never know visions card comes from. It's like sometimes you just don't get answers and
Yeah.
like you have to find the peace in that and like the meaning in that. And for me, writing is how I connect to her and find that meaning.
Yeah. See that that makes a difference to me. That's something I think about a lot. For me, now both of my parents are still living. Um, I've been surrounded by a lot of death more than probably anybody I know for whatever reason. I think it's because my grandparents were a lot older than me when I was growing up because my dad was the baby of like six kids, and he was the last one to come in, and so my grandparents were in their 80s when I was a child, and they died when I was 8 years old and when I was
Mm.
10, and then 2 years after that, my mother's mother died. My great grandmother died right after that. And then my last surviving grandparent died in 2008. And my dad has no living siblings anymore because they've all passed on. And I went to a church that had a bunch of old people in it. Like, I swear I've been to like 30, 40 funerals. And
Mm.
I'm going to be 37 soon. But
Have you noticed like being so, like at the funeral of like an old person where it's like I don't like not that like death is always hard, but I've like being at like the passing of like my bubby who's like a really active player in my life, like who passed. I mean, it wasn't natural causes, but she was very old versus being at like the funeral of like a 21-year-old who like overdosed, and like the how to process like those losses, like the death like versus like the tower of like a catastrophic loss. You know what I mean?
yeah, because I've been through both.
Yes. I was gonna ask, like, how does
Yeah.
it feel? Like, because it's still like a heartbreaking loss to lose someone, but I feel like there's like a road from life to death that like we can almost like see and make sense of. And then there's like people that get like knocked off. Like,
Right. Exactly. There's so to me, and this, like, everybody processes tragedy and death in a different way,
yes.
obviously. My experience could be completely different to others, but if someone has lived a full life, and this has been something that I have realized as of late as I get older, but when someone passes away and they are like, say, of like grandparent age or
Hmm.
whatever, and I did know them and I did have connections to them, friendships, whatever it may be, I am a little more comfortable with the idea because I'm like, okay, this is life. This is how this is
Hmm.
supposed to happen. This is the direction that this goes. So the sorrow aspect of it, like even when my grandparents died, wasn't the initial shock when I was like 8 and 10 years old because those grandparents lived, right next door to me. Like I was in walking distance until
So
that
they were
point.
a huge part
They
of
were
your life and your
huge.
daily reality,
Yes.
almost like parents.
Yeah, like they were always there because they were older, so they were always home.
Hmm.
So whenever we get home from school, my mom would be home, and then my grandparents would be home because they don't have anywhere else to go. So we would have Sunday dinner with them every Sunday and all this stuff, and typical family dynamic. But that that hit me hard because I was so young and didn't understand it. But as it got older and my great grandmother, my grandmother, and my grandfather passed away, it was easier for me to process because I'd also seen all these older people in my church and my friends' grandparents and everything that had passed away prior to that. It doesn't numb you, but it makes you realize like this is just a part of reality. This is how it's going to be. And then my world like hit a really crappy spot when my friend, I think I was 21, uh, kind of out of nowhere, he was addicted to alcohol and had mental stability issues. As one of my closest friends, he committed suicide. He took a whole bottle of sleeping pills and just never woke back up.
Hmm.
And that one, it was the point to where like he had mentioned it in passing a few times. He had told other people, not directly telling me that he was going to do that. But I remember his brother left me a voicemail, and that's how I found out. I don't blame him for that. He had a lot going on, but that was just a really like everything kind of crashed down, and I
Hmm.
was not into like I wasn't full blown addicted or anything, but it was kind of the opposite of what you would think because I know you've been through this too, but like I was a social drinker at that point, just like a lot of 21-ish-year-old people
Mm-hmm.
are. I'd never really drank before that point, but then even though he was full blown alcoholic and had DUIs and he had, caused a lot of problems and a lot of grief for a lot of people through that, that was the moment where I went into full blown addiction.
Yeah.
It was because of that, and you would think that would be a warning sign on the other end, but it's like it's how you, and that's something I didn't escape from until 10 years ago. But um, you just that's kind of the difference, right? Someone that you're close to, and then someone that you do expect at some point they're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be here, versus someone that you're supposed to just kind of grow older with them, like in your
Yeah.
circle. It's completely different.
I mean, addiction is sneaky like that, though. Like, I feel like there's a lot of times where, like, we're at a certain level of addiction and, like, we can't justify it being worse. And then something like that happens and it's terrible and it changes your life, but it's also like, I have a reason
Yeah,
to, like,
right.
go deeper into addiction. And I had a spiritual healer tell me one time, and this really shook me, that everything that happens in this universe is supposed to happen
Mhm.
except for suicide.
Oh,
Like suicide is the
wow.
one thing that like shatters the surface
Yeah.
because it's someone breaking their contract with life, like,
Interesting.
and it creates this like in the way that it changed like my test scores, like it creates this like ripple effect that like tears through everyone that knew them and like actually changes people's destinies. Like, and I do feel like I have some of my mother's destiny like on me now because she did not finish her contract with life. And I've
This,
also, like 26 years later, still see her in almost the exact same place that she was when she passed
yeah, yeah,
because she's stuck in a limbo.
yeah.
And the living have to do some of the work for her to like keep going.
There's something weirdly like there's some beauty in that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
I felt it. Like, I felt because, like, like you want to, like, what a spiritual bypass to be like, yeah, my mom killed herself. She died of addiction, but, everything happens for a reason. Like, no.
Not quite that
No,
way.
that it sucks. And
Yeah.
it did, like, it shattered, like, you can see the bullet hole it left behind, like, in
Yeah.
my family, like, in her friends. Like, I'm talking to people now who knew her, like, talking to a rabbi from 30 years ago,
Oh
like, her friends
wow.
from, like, the Boston Herald when she was in her 20s, and they're haunted by it. Like, one of them wrote a book about her and, like, dedicated it to her. Like,
No.
one of them's like, I still play this song every morning. It's my alarm, like, her favorite song. Like, they don't, like, it, and I think that's like one of the main tragedies of it is like they genuinely believe that like the world will be better off without them, and like we're here like 25 years later being like, fuck, like,
But she left a lot of footprints that she
yes,
didn't think she
she
would.
did. Mm-hmm.
That's just how like I just think that's the legacy thing is like so strong. Like that's just
Yeah.
part of it. So okay, well that part of it. Let's
Yeah.
let's jump into something that's a little. We'll stay on the deep end, but we'll go on the deep end of something else, so we don't just
I
drag all
literally
this.
can't help but talk about my dead mom. Like, every time I get in front of like a microphone, I'm like, is this thing on?
That's why I brought it up because I'm like
You know how to get me going.
I know how to get you going. I know like how I know that as odd as it sounds, you're comfortable there in
I
some ways.
am. I
So
am. I mean, 26 years later, I am. I would talk to friends about how it's like there's a version of the story that you know how to tell and you tell it over and over again. And
absolutely.
then when you talk about it long enough, like you deviate from it and like suddenly like you're like back feeling it again. Like there's a way to tell the story where like you don't have to like feel it so much.
Oh yeah.
I'll go off label here and
Yeah.
cry probably at some point.
Yeah. I was hoping to not get you to the point of tears, so you're
That's nice, Luke. Yeah.
try. You try. Okay. So what I wanted to do is I want to lead into a story that I gave you a little preview of the other day. Was we were just kind of sitting around talking with friends or whatever, and I didn't give you the full thing because I wanted to, for better or worse, just get your perspective on it, connect your life, your experience, and everything to it, and what you think about it, and whatever you say, I don't care. Like this is so the person I'm going to talk about is someone who still in some ways has importance to me just from a historical context, someone that I'm not anymore really connected to, but it was an important part of my life. But I there are a lot of people that think this whole thing is kind of weird, so that's why I wanted to get your perspective on it. And just full disclosure, just let's just go on it and tell me what you think and how does this
Amazing.
connect to stuff. So For anyone who doesn't know, I majored in theology in college. That was my thing. I did Christian studies and all of that. I was going to go into maybe not necessarily ministry, but some sort of counseling, something like that. It was a major in theology, a minor in family and children counseling. That was what I was going to do until I figured out that when people find out that your major and your minor are those things, everybody wants to spill their guts to you 24/7
About their
about
religious trauma
either
and their
religion,
thoughts and opinions.
either religious trauma, their personal like drama, everything. Like anyone who's going through something, they just want to talk to you about it because they think that you want to hear it. And
Yeah.
honestly, you don't.
Should check my DMs.
Well, so I still love the idea. I still love like the study. I loved getting the information, retaining the information. I like that part of it. But as far as like hearing all, everything, like it messes with your head just to hear people's stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really stepping away from it, but I was still entrenched in the study part of it. But I was working as a server at a restaurant, and the restaurant wasn't doing that great as far the GM was fine, like the general manager was fine, but the other people, everything else, like the weight was on her shoulders. So they sent in someone that was like I guess a corporate type training person that had expertise in this is hospitality and this is how you do it because she really needed help. So I'm a server. I'm just theology major. I'm still doing like church all the time. Like I'm still volunteering at college ministries at Georgia Tech. I'm still doing like I would do a 12 credit hour load at school in one day and then go straight from there to Georgia Tech in downtown Atlanta and do 4 or 5 hours of college ministry volunteer work and then jump up the next morning on Tuesday morning and go to work and work a 40-hour week. And I was like, I mean, when you're 20, 21, that's
the only time you could do it.
That's the only time you can do it. That's the only time you can, make that work. Because I had no choice. I had to work.
You have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you have that like hustle fire in you in your
Yeah.
young 20s, and only in your young 20s.
Only in your
so
young
smoke 'em
20s.
while you got them.
Right. So yeah, I was doing that, and then so this trainer lady that everybody's like, "Oh, Bonnie's coming." I'm like, "Who's Bonnie?" Like whatever. And so she walks in, and she's like working with all these people and training all these people. But I noticed like the first day that she walks in and she notices me, she like looks at me and just kind of stares at me in kind of like an intense way, and then just kind of scurried off. And I'm like, "What is this? Like, what is this? I don't understand." And she's there for a couple weeks training other people, showing them the ropes, like this is how you do stuff and whatever, and this is how you treat customers, and this is how things need to run on this end, because she's really good at that. Obviously, she was hired in to do that, and she just like a couple weeks go by and she finally approaches me, and she's like, "Hey, I know we haven't talked much, I'm Bonnie, whatever." And she's older than my mother at that point. This is like 2005, and
And you were 21.
I was 21. She's like probably 60. And she was like, "The reason I never approached you," she was like, "is because when I walked in and I saw you," she's like, "your aura was just such a presence that it was like, I guess, intimidating. And it was, I didn't know how to navigate you. And I was just, I wanted to give it time. I wanted to watch from a distance and make sure that I wasn't overstepping and thinking things that, weren't actually true." And she was like, "There's just something about you. There's something about your presence." And she was like, I had to step away from it. There's too much power in that. It was too powerful and whatever. And I just wanted to let you know that." She's like, "There's something special about you, and I see it, and I've never even spoken to you until now." And being a kid that's doing like college ministry stuff and in school for theological studies and entrenched in like learning Hebrew and first century Greek and hermeneutics and everything that goes along with that intense like study, and you're here, like you've learned theology this whole time, and there's no auras in theology. There's no auras in the Bible. There's
The Holy Spirit kind of an aura.
kind of, yeah. It depends how literal you're taking that. Yeah, it's more of a vibe.
It's more of a vibe than an aura. It's more of a mood.
Yeah. So like that's not really directly like addressed.
I'm
So,
kidding, but I hear you.
I totally get it. And so like that's something that we never discussed in like growing up in a church environment. It's like witchcraft is evil, Wicca stuff is evil, Reiki stuff, and they don't even know what that is bad.
Yeah.
The devil has horns and a pitchfork, kind of, whatever. So then we started becoming like more friendly and whatever, and she really takes a liking to me and I take a liking to her. Just a great person overall. A little out there, a lot of stuff I didn't understand, and I wasn't completely open to the idea at all. Like, it was just, I accepted who she was and the things that she was saying without necessarily saying like, I don't agree with this or I don't understand this, please explain it to me. I didn't want to know. But then one day, she was like, I'm a Christian too, but I also practice witchcraft and Reiki. And I'm like, can you do that? And like, that's the, and then it kind of snowballed. Yeah. Like that. And she said, oh yeah, you can totally do that. And I'm like, oh, well, news to me. And then she's like, hey, I want you to do something. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, I was a little nervous about that, obviously, because having a discussion like that I don't completely understand.
You're just like a 20-year-old baby, and the
Oh, yeah.
6-year-old woman is like, come here, child.
I know.
Like,
Yeah, because it's like the dynamic kind of changes a little bit because the more friendly she gets to you and she's not wearing her work face, she's wearing like her personal, like, I'm inviting you in face. It's a little different. So I'm intimidated. And like, our general manager was a good friend of this woman, and she was like, you're going to be fine. Like,
she's not gonna like
yeah.
sacrifice the
Yeah,
full moon.
like don't think anything weird about it, whatever. That's just her. That's who she is. She's really spiritual. Just accept it. It's fine. If you don't accept it, she'll go away. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I accept everybody. That's fine. And then she was like, I want you to do something with me. She was like, a bunch of us, meaning the servers at the restaurant, and one of them, whose name was Raven, was deep into witchcraft. And I don't know if it was like, it was like the stereotype. Like, the dude wore a pentagram and had
Purple velvet.
I'm sure in his off
Was
time.
there purple velvet in the room?
I don't know. See, I never went to the dude's like place or anything, but he was the expo guy, so he was the sous chef, kind of like, he assembled everything before it went in the expo window to go to the customers. So you'd have conversations because you're waiting for your food. And no, I don't even know what the dude's real name was. He just went by Raven. He wore all black. He had the pentagram hanging around his neck. And like,
And this was in Georgia.
this was in Georgia. Like, I don't
10,
think,
15 years ago.
yeah, I don't think people realize how diverse like the suburban like city part of Georgia is.
And how subversive it is to have like a witch come find you. And
Right.
invite you to her coven in like the woods of Georgia.
Yeah, it's a little. I think people are surprised when they find out just how like progressive things go in certain areas, and then once you get out of the sticks, it's
completely different.
It's completely different.
But there's a few pockets.
Yeah, you get out of that 15-mile Atlanta radius, and it's just like banjos.
But witches are everywhere. They're in the sticks.
Oh, they're
like,
in the
being in
sticks.
North Carolina has taught me, like, the people that have driven like 3 hours to be like, this is my first witch store, or like
Yeah.
ever telling someone I'm a witch. Like, the beauty about witches is we are everywhere.
Exactly, but you may, in the more rural areas, you might be a little more clandestine.
You have to hide.
Yeah.
You have to hide. No,
Yeah.
you're fully hidden.
Yeah, exactly. So she was like, she's like, I'm gathering up a bunch of these people, and we're going to go to the Roswell Mill, which is a Civil War era mill that's in a town called Roswell. Very historical, very old school town. It's very pretty. It's on a creek. It has a nice bridge over it. It has walking trails and stuff. There is a lot of tragedy that went through there when Sherman marched to Atlanta, and because it's on the north end of the city. It's like right there. But it's very close to where I live. And she was like, we're going to go out there on a full moon at midnight, and we're going to do some stuff. And I'm like, no. And she was like,
Let's go, girl.
yeah, see, Bakara's into that. I was apprehensive about it initially, and then I was like, okay.
But you still went?
Okay, yeah. So this is how she explained it to me. This is when I started to really think, like, this woman, like, okay, she's not on level with where I am in life right now, but I trust this person. I really do, because she was like, I'm gonna ride in the car with you, and everyone else is just gonna split up and whatever. And she was like, we're in the car, we're just driving there. It's like 15 minutes away. And she's like, I just want to let you know that these people are going to be out there, and they're going to be probably, taking some drugs and whatever. She's like, they're all already drunk. Like, they're going to experience what they want to, because they're so deep in just they're doing it as more of a joke. Like they're like, haha, I want to see a ghost or I want to feel
Mm-hmm.
something. She was like, I don't want you to do that. She said, you go in there with an open mind, but you go in there not expecting to see shit. She's like, you go in there with zero expectation, wipe it, just act like you're walking through the woods or whatever we do. She said, just act like it's any other day. And she said, when you think you see something, verify that you see it. Don't let your mind tell you that you're seeing something that you're not. She's like, just let it be. And she's like, I will let you tell me what you see, and I will confirm whether or not I see it too. And she's like, do you trust me? And I said, yeah, I trust you. Of course I do. And this is scary for me
Mm-hmm.
because I'm kind of at that point, like fairly sheltered in a lot of ways. But we get out there, and sure enough, like we had these two other girls that were with us, and they were just kind of like giggly, whatever, behind. And then the rest of the group split off and went in another direction. It's a big walking trail. There was a lot of bad stuff that happened out there that's well documented. Like when, a lot of the soldiers went through the mill and they did a lot of really atrocious things to the women that worked in the mill because all the men were fighting in the war. So the women were running the town. The
Mm-hmm.
women were running the mill. They were doing all the production and all of that. It was a textile mill. And there's a lot of really bad stuff that happened in those woods. And I saw some shit and I felt some shit and she did too. And we had the same story, like to the point to where I'd never experienced anything like that in my life. And that's a whole other thing that I'll have to talk about on a different one if anybody wants to hear it, because it goes way too deep. But that was the point to where like we literally got chased out of the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Like things were moving that shouldn't have been moving, like physical objects were moving, and it was the most surreal thing that I'd ever experienced. And I'm just thinking about it from like a perspective of whether or not anyone believes that you can be what she said as can you intertwine Christianity with witchcraft? Can you do that? Can you intertwine it with her practice of Reiki and her feeling about the power that is harnessed within the energy that's inside of crystals and rocks and nature? Does it intertwine? I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but what I can tell you is that I trusted her just to experience whatever she was going through and let like kind of open that door, and it changed the way I looked at everything from that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything, the way I looked at people, the way I looked at the world in general, without necessarily writing off everything I knew before and everything I was studying without writing it off. It was just
So you were able to integrate it, your
right.
new experience with
Yeah.
what you knew.
When
And
I
that's kind of the gag, isn't it? It's like witchcraft and Christianity have always been intertwined since like the very beginning. And now we're sitting here like, being like, can they intertwine? It's like Christmas is a pagan holiday. Like, I'm like, it already, like, it's been had, it's been done, it already happened. And like we were evidence of that. Like I moved into this apartment in Brooklyn and very quickly you are telling me the rest of the story now, so I have a totally different response. But there was like, I moved into this apartment in Brooklyn, and there was like this puddle of water that would come up in the middle of my bedroom,
Mhm.
and I would watch it. Like, I would like literally like watch the floor be dry and just like watch like this puddle of water come up. I'm like, cool, I live in a shitty apartment. I'm going to die.
It was a
Like, there's
hardwood
like,
floor.
yes, it was a
Okay.
hardwood floor. I'm like, it's rotted out. Like, I'm about to like fall into my neighbor's bedroom. I called my landlord. They had like engineers and architects and all these people come there. Like it must be coming from like the heater, or you must have spilled water and forgot. Like gaslit the fuck out of me. And I'm like, it didn't. And I have watched this happen several times. I just forgot about it. And one time I was with my friend who was over, and she was a medium and she was very new to like all of it.
Mhm.
And I was not into it at all.
Oh.
So this was like we were sitting on my bed and we both watched it. Like we watched like the puddle of water appear in the middle of the
Oof.
floor. And I'm like, and I'm just like turned to her, I'm like, yeah, sorry, my apartment does that sometimes. She's like, Bakara. She's like, this is spirit activity. And I was just like, oh my God, of course it's spirit activity. Like there wasn't a part of me that was like, no, it's like, shut up, no, it's not. I'm just like, yes, it is.
Wow.
So we did a seance We like surrounded where the puddle was with sticky notes so we could burn it after because we're not trying to like keep an Ouija board in the house.
No, no.
So we did sticky note alphabet and we put a shot glass in the middle of the circle where the water would come from. And it just started spelling gun, like over and over again, like gun, gun, gun.
No.
And like my blood goes cold in my veins. I'm like, close it, burn it, like what? And Allie, my friend who was there, she's like, were you killed with a gun? And it goes to yes. Because she's also a medium, so she's able to communicate with this man. I was in a totally Italian mob-run 50 years ago neighborhood.
Oh,
This man
wow.
was, and before that, this is so crazy. The 2 nights before that, I had been doing a guided meditation, and I felt this woman come in, and I could tell she was coming from like this Italian restaurant, Vinny's, and she was like in an apron, covered in flour, and she would stand in front of me, open her mouth, and scream like a blood curdling scream. And I was so scared I stopped meditating because I'm like, I don't want to like, I'm like, I don't know what dark portal I've opened. Like, I don't know why I'm seeing this woman, but she really, really scared me. And where Allie's asking this guy questions, turns out that is his wife. He has 2 children. He was a hitman for the mob and he got killed by the mob on that block. And he is stuck on that block. And his children are waiting for him on the other side. His wife is waiting for him on the other side. And Allie's like, have you been making the puddles of water on the floor? And it goes like, it writes out, sorry. And she's like, why have you been doing that? And it goes, tears. And she, like, he was a Catholic. She is a very, like, she also straddles the line between witchcraft and Christianity.
Okay.
So she started saying all these prayers, like these Christian prayers, like to like open a border between whatever realm he was stuck in and where he needed to go.
Like a purgatory or something.
Yes.
Okay.
And she was like fully like praying and like reciting Bible verses, and you could feel the energy in the room change. Like it stopped being cold. Like he wrote out thanks, and it like the lights turned back on, like the temperature went back to normal, and it was like one of the most beautiful, profound, like doubt erasing things I've ever experienced. And like we needed a Bible and an Ouija board, like in order to do it. Like we needed both. Those were both essential tools in figuring out what this was and helping them cross over.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was just kind of like annoying and then scary. Like,
Yeah.
and I think once you kind of like push past that, I think I'm lucky because growing up Jewish, like I had my own dogma like shoved down my throat, but we weren't told like bad things about like witchcraft or like other religions. Like it was just like God is mad and like don't make God mad. Like okay,
Right.
whatever. But I grew up with Harry Potter and Charmed and Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all of this like incredible witch content that we were fed in the 90s. And no one ever told me that was like wrong. No one ever told me like, oh, this is bad. Like I wrote a letter to the Chicago Tribune when they tried banning Harry Potter. And I'm like, don't ban Harry Potter. I got published. I was like so passionate.
Well, that was your mom's paper
Like in
too.
3rd grade, yes, I was one of the ones that she worked at. That is so funny. Yeah. It was like my first published work in like 4th grade. I'm like, you should not ban books because like Harry Potter is good. I don't even remember what I said, but so once I found magic and like the few times in my life before I fully stepped into magic, that magic was like like shown to me, I'm like, it always felt like this very like special, like, oh, like a crystal or like a
Right.
sacred circle or like, are you a witch? Like there wasn't anything to undo. But so it's very easy for me, especially to like look at these like tools and consider them all tools of magic, to look at Jesus and the Divine Mother and Magdalene as like archetypal figures that I
I
can
see.
petition like a god or a goddess, you know?
Okay. Because on the environment that I was brought up in was a very evangelical
Yes, it's
sect of
so
Baptist
different.
Christianity, and it's as much as I'm highly critical of a lot of stuff, not quite openly yet. I'm sure that will come with time, but looking back at it now, I see a lot of things where it was like there was a lot of, I don't know if you call it gatekeeping on their part or if you just call it like dismissal or let's just ignore this and act like it doesn't exist. Like that was the mentality, because I remember one time when I was a teenager, I asked our pastor about witchcraft, and because you assume growing up in that environment like this guy should know everything about everything. And then I asked him about that, and it was pretty much like, yeah, that's wrong, that's bad, don't go there. It doesn't make sense, it's not real, so don't even pay attention to it. And that was pretty much where it stopped. And I'm like, Yeah, but it's real to somebody.
Hmm.
Like, even if it's not real to you, it's still real to somebody, and you've got to put a little validity in that, even if your point is to try to reach them, and in whatever way that you think is appropriate on the things that you believe. You still have to. You don't have to necessarily be like, yeah, I go along with this, but you can't discount it and just say what you do is not real, because it's real to somebody. And
Well, that's what's hard for me about any religion is like the dogma that you're expected to swallow, like full stop. It's like there's parts of Judaism where I'm like, lit. Yes, like I get it. I see it. Like in every religion, but like to swallow the pill whole, like it's like I simply can't. Like my sensibilities won't let me. Like the way like Judaism like speaks about women, I'm so not about. The way that Christianity is like one of the newest religions. And so now they're like Judaism didn't know to be like, no other books can be written after this. Like we're the first one. Like we didn't think of
yeah,
like now Christianity is like coming in like third, being like, we're the last one. I'm like, yeah, okay, you guys. Like, can everyone just like calm down?
and
Like
the Jewish text is in the Christian Bible. Like, it's all interconnected. Like,
yes.
so it's like, come on.
It's also literally interconnected that I find it almost baffling that like people can't like see how it's still all connected.
Yeah,
Like it
it
started off connected.
it either, like, because that's the thing, I guess. You can either allow it to evolve, or you can let it stay where it is. But if the world is changing, and Christian people and a lot of religious people hate the word evolve and evolution for a lot of
Yeah,
reasons.
we don't want to evolve.
Yeah, but you want to stay stuck where you are, versus, like, regardless, like, but God is allowing things to change if that's your perspective of what you
Well,
believe.
God is either everything or God is nothing.
Correct.
So it can't just be like some verses of the Bible and like
Right.
not the other ones. But I don't know. I mean, I think like having to take like any single text and like if it interferes with my own sense of morality and my own sensibilities, like I'm not gonna like override my I'm not gonna like employ cognitive dissonance to like be
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm just gonna like ignore that
Yeah.
because it fractures your own soul, like in your own
Mhm.
being. So I think that people are like gravitating towards these other understandings of a higher power that is really like there's no deep upsetting like of like yes I have a relationship with a higher power but I have to believe that like gay people are going to hell in order to like belong in my community.
Right, right, exactly. So that's that. Like, it goes so deep. Like, it's hard for me to process that. But the thing about it, can you dispel the evil witch idea or not? Can you?
Mm. Well, I mean, but in order to dispel the evil, which idea you have to dispel the notion of evil
Exactly. Okay.
entirely. And
Yes.
evil is like a very, very Christian construct. Like not there's like wickedness and light and shadow and like duality, but the concept of evil is connected to the principle of like the negative principle, the principle of darkness, like
Sinning.
the yeah, duality.
Hmm.
And like before there was any connotation or like understanding of like this is bad and this is good, like the negative and positive was the feminine and masculine. It was the light and the dark, the like these the hot and the cold, like the two aspects that create this whole reality. So both are actually completely neutral and you need one to create the
Mm,
other. And Alan Watts talks about this. He's like, there is no outstanding without an instanding. Like there is no star without an audience. Like
mhm.
there's no star in the sky without like the darkness that surrounds it. And we all take turns of like who's doing what. And like
Right.
sometimes we shine and most of the time we're in the background. So I think holding the space is the negative, is the like they say negative space.
Yes.
And so where evil became connected to that, I don't know, like the dark, the unknown, the fear of the divine feminine, when the goddess got cut out of the holy text, like
Hmm.
I'm not sure, but the hated notion of evil and darkness is connected to the lack of understanding around the divine feminine. So I don't think evil's even like a thing. And a witch is like evil witch, like is like witch is feminine. It's like the hated feminine.
Right. And so that's why I brought that up, because this whole thing actually took a different direction, but I'm so invested in it now.
It did for me too. You did not tell me the whole story. I thought we were going like a totally different way.
Yeah, but it's working because I knew you'd be able to handle it.
Slay.
Yeah. So okay. Um, this is, and by the way, if anyone's listening to this that I grew up with, I am not disputing getting rid of the Christian doctrine and my Christian ideals. I'm having a conversation here. I'm not saying that I'm immersing in anything. I'm just saying like my studies and the things of where I grew up, I still very much hold those things close to me. I'm just having conversation with people.
Absolutely. And in the study of the divine, you're going like even as like someone who didn't grow up Christian, like as I've endeavored to know God, I've learned about Christianity.
Yeah.
Like there is the nature of God in everything. Like
Yes.
so it's not like any one religion is wrong. Like
Correct.
they're all just like the texts of those religions are written by people who are like, I'm gonna translate this word this way, or like I don't like women, so I'm gonna take this out. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like,
Because this is the thing that I always had problems, or I guess problems with. I didn't say this yet, but I got kicked out of seminary. That was fun.
oh word.
Like it was like I think it was 3 or 4 credit hours short, but
Oh, so you're like literally hours away.
yeah,
Okay.
I was close. I was very close. I'd been in it for a long time. And,
You are. It's
well,
never too. You could still do it if
yeah.
you felt like it.
They pretty much made it impossible for me to re-enroll. They did a bunch of stuff to all of that. My grades weren't bad or anything at all. It's just they made it impossible for me to get back into that exact school. So I just was like, okay, screw it, whatever. But the whole thing is like this is and this is the thing that really bugs me. Oh, I'll start here though. You say the text and the translations and everything, something that you learn in seminary is called hermeneutics, and it's the direct translation of the things that are written in Hebrew manuscript without putting anything else interjecting into it. It's literal. You take the word by word and you put it in there. You're not trying to say what did they mean when they said
Right.
this. It's direct.
What's
like
the word?
what's the word? It's literally you get a copy of uh, essentially the Torah, and it has everything written out the way, and that's what you study because you try to figure out the connection to it without saying this is what I think. Because it's literal. It's not thinking. You're not supposed to think. It's just supposed to be. And the stuff that goes between the hermeneutical model and the stuff that goes between the text that's written in the Bible and in the King James version and the NIV, whatever it might be, it doesn't exactly flow. So there is a lot of back and forth in there. And the original text obviously didn't have it broken down verse by verse. That was done for a specific purpose. So you can move stuff around and take things out of different places and stick them together like they're supposed to be there, but they're not. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. But when you question that, when you ask like, then why are we doing it this way? Because the professor, the dean, has a doctorate in theology. He's an MDiv and he has a PhD. He's supposed to know all this stuff. And it's like, well, if the hermeneutics don't match the text that you read on Sunday, someone in the middle says that they were divinely inspired, that this is what Paul meant or this is what John meant. So where's the discourse? Like, how do you justify that? And I asked him this in class, and I wasn't trying to be anything. I was a genuine question, like, how do you justify like that? Like, I know things change over time because biblical text, you don't just take another text that's been translated and then retranslate it to make it more modern. You've got to start at the beginning
Original.
or they don't legitimize it. You can't just build off of it. And he was like, well, people have different, faith experiences. And because of that, you can't say they're wrong because it's divine, it's through God. And I'm like,
But then you're reading the text of their
yeah. And I'm
divine
like,
inspirations.
it doesn't match. And I'm like, this doesn't go from hermeneutically to King James, which is the like original, of King James. That's his translation. It doesn't match. Like, why? Like, which one do you look at? Like, which one are you supposed to focus on? Then he was like, well, you just got to trust the translation. Then you got to trust the translator. You've got to trust because the other translations seem to match it too. It's like, yeah, but the people that translated the most recent version also probably read the one that came before it. So how do you like, and he didn't have an answer. He didn't like me. And I wasn't trying
Yeah.
to stir the pot. Like I wasn't.
You're that's a genuine question, but it's hard because like even as you ask it, it's like there's no answer that someone who is completely swallow the dogma whole can answer that in a way that doesn't crack like
Yeah.
the
And it's not limited to Christianity. It's in everything.
no.
If you
It happened to me like in Jewish day school. I'd be like, how did Moses part the sea? And like if he could do, and they're like, God helped him. I'm like, how? It was just like it was so evident to me from such an early age that like it took me it wasn't until like my late 20s, early 30s where I'm like, this isn't all bullshit. Like
Mhm.
I was very angry. I was very skeptical. Like, because we had learned like like whatever, someone in like the Torah couldn't have like their wife couldn't have a kid, so like they bring in one of the daughters, and that's like holy. Like there's all like this like treatment
Yeah.
of women, and I'm like reading it as like a young girl. I'm like, okay, like bar and bat mitzvahs, like where you become like a adult in the eyes of the Jewish community. Like there's a certain age that boys have to have it, but it doesn't matter when girls have to when get they get it because they weren't supposed to get it anyway, and they're not really allowed to get it. So it's
Mhm.
only like lesser forms of Judaism that let girls have a bat mitzvah or touch the Torah or
Yeah.
like and you have to get it before a certain age so you're not bleeding because men are afraid of periods and there's all this shit about periods and I'm just like
Oh, the
this
mikvah.
this isn't for me. Like that's what it feels like when I read these things. Like and then we learned about Christianity and there's this guy started a new form of Christianity so he could like marry this woman and I'm just like clearly like there's so much human interference like that but clearly there's also something. Humans want to believe in something. We want to
Yeah.
like look up and feel awe. We want to belong to a community. And like that's like a lot of the things that like the implementation of like churches and mosques and synagogues like originally gave us like was community and a place to go and a place to
Yeah.
like be among people and a place to get dressed up and a place to like be inspired. And now there's lots of other places that are beginning to form where people can go and get those needs met in a way that doesn't like cause the same, I don't know,
Yeah. No, I
ideological damage.
Yeah. On that note, though, this is something that I will say that I was not expecting, and again, this was me in my much younger days. This was actually the same around the same era as the whole like walking through the woods with Bonnie and having shit chase me out of the woods ordeal. Um, when I was in my parents live on a they don't live there anymore. They've moved since then, but we our whole family's existence since 1969 was on a 3-acre parcel of land that was landlocked. It was no road frontage or anything in a little city called Johns Creek on the north end of Atlanta. And when I was in high school, the 3 acres in front of my family's property that did have road frontage, and then also the 3-acre tract beside it was bought by someone from New York, and we didn't know what was going on. We were like, oh, it's a developer. This is going to suck. And then this guy comes over to visit my family, and like I said, we're all Christian people. Like my grandmother was the type where when the Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door, my grandmother would bring her Bible out with her and want to sit down and have a talk. Like,
Oh.
yeah, she was that kind of person. So like deep seated like Southern Christianity, like that was a generational thing in my family. And so
Is she Baptist?
Baptist.
So she would like go tell the Jehovah's Witnesses what was what?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was her premise. She wanted to have a discussion and she wanted to make sure that they understood who she was and where she stood. And she didn't want them to come back. And it would be like, a couple of generations of their, foot ministry people that are walking around. They would not come to her house. It would only happen like every 5 years.
Mm.
So they knew better. Like she was on some kind of watch list or something for them. I don't know. But
How do you get blacklisted from the Jehovah's Witnesses knock list?
yeah,
Asking for a friend.
I don't know. I wish I could ask her now, but but anyway, this dude comes up to the house at one point and he's wearing a black top hat and he's wearing a white button-up shirt and he's wearing a nice fitted suit and he's got these ringlets in his hair and these threads hanging down off his pockets and we're like, this dude's Jewish. And he like and then he walks up and I think he's talking to my uncle who also lived next door because he lived with my grandparents. He was like their caretaker.
It was like Hasidic Jewish.
Yeah,
Yeah.
straight up. He was Orthodox.
Hmm.
And so he walks in and he's like, "Hey, I just want to introduce myself. I'm the person who bought the property in front of you. We can't really make a scene about, who's purchasing or whatever. We don't want to draw attention to anything, but we felt we owed it to you to say that it was us who bought it." And then my family's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And he's like, "Oh, we're building a temple here. Like we're building a synagogue here." Like I'm like, "Oh, okay. Interesting. I don't know how you're going to do that, but whatever." So he had been sent from Crown Heights, New York, where he's based out of.
Hmm.
He did all of his studies there and everything, and he spent time in, I guess, Israel and he's full blown rabbi. This is his first congregation, and he's like, Atlanta is your place. There's a lot of Jews in Atlanta that aren't served. So they sent him there. He bought it, and then they started having their services in like those portable classroom trailers for a long time. And then it was so unreal what happened in just our little corner of Johns Creek, Georgia, because it was the place I grew up is it's not the most crazy diverse area in the world, but it's more diverse than small pockets that are in rural Georgia. It's more diverse than a lot of places in the Midwest. Like I never had a class growing up where there weren't at least 3 or 4 kids that were minority ever in my childhood. Like we have a large Asian population, a large Indian population, a large Black population. Like there were just it wasn't just a bunch of white kids. So it was pretty diverse for what it was in the area at the time in the 90s and the early 2000s. But the Jewish population wasn't that big at the time. My whole time growing up, I had some Jewish friends or whatever, but it wasn't like a big deal. But what happened there were all these subdivisions that were well established, that were around this project that this rabbi had taken on or was given, I guess, by the church or the
Did it
temple.
fill up with Jews?
Over a span of like 10 years, this one road
Yeah.
that because my parents are essentially on a corner of a main drag, and then there's this side road that goes down, and it's just lined with subdivisions on both sides. It's not sides, nice houses, like really nice houses. You know, most of them are probably 3,000 plus square feet, 2-story with basements and stuff, like just really nice suburban Atlanta houses. And all of a sudden, he's petitioned, I guess, the city to start building sidewalks. And I don't know if they've helped fund it or what happened, but you know, because observant Jews,
Have to walk
they have to
temple.
walk. They have to walk. They're not allowed to do any labor. Nothing, no manual labor, nothing. So I watched over a span of 10 years, all of the white and minority families, whenever they would sell a house, some Jewish person from, I don't know if they were from in-state or if they were from out of state and just wanted to live there or not. But as soon as one of those houses went on the market, it was snapped up immediately. And then they started making these walking trails through the woods of the property that he bought that backed up to these neighborhoods. So it became a Jewish community in a matter of 10 years. That entire road, pretty much, other than some holdouts that just had no reason to move, but you know, people move house all the time. It's become a Jewish community, and they've built a physical building since then. Like it's got a mikveh, it's got all the parking situated. They still have the trails that run through the woods and stuff that back up to the homes. He ended up buying the property next to my parents. That was just a shitty little strip of land because the shitty strip of land went directly across the back of the subdivision. And the people that live there have these cut throughs that they allow people to walk between their houses because they're all part of the same community. And when my parents decided, you know, it wasn't because of them. They always had a great relationship with the rabbi. We always did. We love him. His name is Hirsch, and he's a wonderful person. When they decided, I'd already moved out to a different part of I moved into a city called Alpharetta, which is like right around the corner. But they, it was just like my parents wanted to move so badly, and the rabbi was like, I want first option to buy, whatever. And they gave him first option to buy. He ended up buying that too. So now it is a literal compound, and my parents' old 3-acre property is now going to be a sports complex. But the thing about it is, they bought it like 3 years ago, I think. But the thing is, when all of those observant Orthodox Jews moved into our area, they brought my family in and considered us a part of their community. They said that over and over. Like I would hit golf balls from our front yard into the woods in front where all those walking trails were, and the kids, when sundown happened and they were allowed to do work, they scattered into those woods and they would pick up every golf ball and throw it back into our yard.
Really?
Yeah, it was the most magical thing. Like I just get up in the morning on like a Sunday, and there'd just be like 50 golf balls just sitting in the front yard because they wanted me to hit them back out there again. And like, it was just the thing that we did. And I never knew these kids. I never talked to them, nothing. But like the elder people that are within that community, the rabbi, like when my uncle that lived next door, he lived on property when he died. The first thing that happened is one of the prominent members of that community brought a bunch of Jewish comfort food to my parents.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's the way.
so it's like everything's interconnected, and that's kind of where I wanted to land. Like, that's where we end up, the podcast. That's where I wanted to end up. Like, the perspective of you as someone who grew up with the connected life of Judaism, and now you have all these other facets, and you're looking at everything else, and you have realized how interconnected everything is through the spiritual experience of your mother, through the spiritual experience of you going through a 12-step program, through writing a book about the experiences of tarot, being an active tarot reader, being an author. You've seen a lot of stuff that most people probably don't, and you have a perspective that I think is, you know, a lot different than most people that just stayed in that one little pocket. You're more faceted.
It's an evolutionary truth that diverse ecosystems are healthier. They're more robust.
Mhm.
They're more likely to survive like illness or plague, like. And what's sad to me as a Jewish person is that Jewish people haven't had the option to have diversity in their
Right.
community for like thousands of years, to the point where my DNA as a Jewish person in Eastern Europe is different than an Eastern European because our
Oh,
communities were so insular,
right.
that it was almost a tribe.
Hmm.
So when you see Jewish people congregate in these places, like a rabbi comes and like the whole community goes, like it's because there's a strength in numbers mentality.
Hmm.
And it really is up to the majority to create safe places for the minority, for
Absolutely.
diversity to be possible. But that ultimately benefits us all because we have a whole healthier ecosystem as
Hmm.
a result of diversity.
Right.
So I think being able to kind of straddle that line of understanding a minority mindset while still enjoying a lot of the privileges of the majority in this country, like I'm able to kind of see both sides. And
Yeah.
the choice that I've made is like I want to be a little bit of everywhere. Like some of my closest friends are Afghan Muslim, and like I
Right.
have friends who are very devout Christian. I have friends who are totally atheist, and I have a lot of friends who are kind of just like in the middle of like we all are just like vibes. Like whatever, like all the same, like we don't care, like we're all just kind of making our way to the mountaintop together. So
Yeah.
I think diversity always is the goal, inclusion, like just creating a safe place for whoever wants to be there and being like as kind and accommodating to each other as possible in the process.
And you landed exactly where I thought you
Slay.
would. I love it. I love it. But so we're running up on the hour right now.
Perfect.
I
Perfect
know it's
timing.
perfect. So thanks for being here. Oh my God, thanks for talking. This is everything I hoped it would be.
Yay, I'm so glad. This was so much fun. Do I get to ask my question to you now?
You'll ask it in the next. We're gonna take a little break, and then we were going to have her ask me a question. So
Great.
we're gonna sign off. I'm gonna say goodbye, and Bakara's gonna say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.